All right, y'all, we got some breaking news here for you on Chat Sports. Mike Conley, formerly of the Memphis Grizzlies, has officially been dealt to the Utah Jazz. Now, this trade has kind of been in talks for quite a while now. Things are getting rolling, and now it has finally happened just a day before the NBA draft. We got the full details for you. Grayson Allen, Jae Crowder, and Kyle Korver are all being sent to Memphis, along with the number 23 pick in this year's 2019 NBA draft and a future first-round pick with a lot of protections on it. The details on that we'll get to you here soon. And then Mike Conley, the sole player being sent to Utah. They get their starting caliber point guard to pair alongside Donovan Mitchell in the backcourt. Look, that's what they've been wanting to do. Donovan Mitchell is a great player. He's going to be your best scorer without a doubt, but you have to have a point guard that's going to pass him the ball and distribute well in the backcourt, and that's exactly what Mike Conley does. Another thing Mike Conley does really, really well is show strong defensive ability. I mean, you can argue that his defensive ability is just as strong, if not stronger, than what he can do on the offensive side of the court. He averaged a career high in points per game this past season. Now, the defensive stats, they don't really show up in the box score, but what he does offensively absolutely does. Stellar year in Memphis. He had 21.1 points per game and 6.4 assists. Again, that 21.1 is a career high. It was, even though, Memphis, he was really the only good, solid player on that team, along with 3.4 rebounds and shot 36.4% from beyond the three-point arc. Mike Conley is a stud, both sides of the ball. Utah is getting a stellar point guard that they're going to be able to start next to Donovan Mitchell. They're letting Ricky Rubio walk in free agency, and they're bringing Mike Conley in via trade. So again, let's recap what the details were on that deal. Memphis is getting Grayson Allen, who was a draft pick last season. Jae Crowder, who's just bounced around the league a ton now, but still a solid role player, good defensive and three-point shooter. And then Kyle Korver, look, I don't expect him to be in Memphis long. Maybe they look to move him. Maybe they look to buy him out because he is an older guy and Memphis isn't in this mode of, hey, we need old role players to come in. And then, of course, Memphis also gets the number 23 overall pick in this year's draft and a future first-round pick with a lot of heavy protections on it. Utah get their man in Mike Conley. So now we got to look at what the Memphis Grizzlies could look like next season because this deal shakes up quite a bit. Ja Morant is now their starting point guard. And not yet. We have the draft tomorrow night, which we're going to be live for here on Chat Sports. So be sure you're tuned into that. But Ja Morant going number 2 overall. He will be their starting point guard next season. He will develop into a star. Justin Holiday, he's fine. I'm not super high on him, but, as a rebuild with Ja Morant there, it's pretty solid. And then Jae Crowder coming in as your new starting small forward because, look, Chandler Parsons is getting paid way too much. He's too hurt to start. So you put Crowder in there to start. He just makes sense with that grit and grind mentality that Memphis has. Jaren Jackson Jr., a star, the number 4 overall pick last season. Love him. And then Jonas Valanciunas, he did opt out of that player option that he had, but he is expected to move forward in a new deal with the Memphis Grizzlies. So let's recap this new lineup here for Memphis. Ja Morant and Justin Holiday is your backcourt. Jae Crowder, now probably the starting forward there, alongside Jaren Jackson Jr., and your big man in the middle is Jonas Valanciunas. So now we look at Utah because this is what this deal was all about. Getting Mike Conley in a Jazz uniform, and that backcourt is absolutely solid. I love this backcourt that Utah now has a veteran star in Mike Conley, 21.1 points per game last season. Again, that is a career high for him. Donovan Mitchell is your young up-and-coming guy who debatably should have won Rookie of the Year. Joe Ingles, I love Joe Ingles, a 3-and-D guy, and he's going to basically guard anyone you need him to, and he's just gritty. Derek Favors, we'll have to see what he does this summer, but I'd expect him back in Utah. And then Rudy Gobert is your big man in the middle, one of the best, if not the best, defensive big man in the game. So you look at that starting 5, the Utah Jazz are ready to make a strong push in the NBA playoffs. Of course, they beat Oklahoma City in the first round a couple years ago, and they got bounced out pretty early this season. But I want to know from you guys, who won this trade? If you think it's the Memphis Grizzlies, I want you to type G in the comment section below. If you think it was the Utah Jazz getting Mike Conley, type J in the comment section below. And look, I don't think there's any debate. I think it is absolutely the Utah Jazz that won this trade. They get a all-star, perennial all-star player in Mike Conley. And what, they give up Grayson Allen, who barely played. They give up Jae Crowder, who's a fringe role player. And Kyle Korver was just an old veteran. And then the number 23 pick, which in this draft is kind of like, whatever. And I want to shout out one of our producers here at Jazz Sports, Dylan Tippett. You can go give him a follow on Twitter and tell him that he's wrong because he thinks the Memphis Grizzlies won this trade. And if you think he's wrong, go tell him because he is. So let's talk about Grayson Allen because this is one of the guys that the Jazz are going to get. 5.6 points per game, 0.6 rebounds, 0.7 assists at 32.3% from beyond the three-point arc. Of course, Grayson Allen had a limited role in Utah because they were a playoff team, so they didn't really need his production there. But 0.6 points per game, 0.7 assists. He was in the G League a lot. I like him as a prospect, but he's just, not a key piece of this trade. I mean, the biggest piece of this trade was the fact that they got the number 23 overall pick. Again, Grayson Allen, good athlete. He can score in bunches at times when he's dialed in, but he's going to spend most of his time in the G League. Now, if he goes to now that he is a Memphis Grizzly, maybe Grayson Allen can get some playing time. I think he could maybe even take over a starting shooting guard role depending on how Justin Holiday continues to shake out and if he continues to develop and he doesn't have attitude issues because we all know Grayson Allen at Duke had some attitude issues. But he does fit that grit and grind mentality of the Memphis Grizzlies, much like Jae Crowder. You can see what he did in Utah last season, again, as a role player, 11.9 points per game, 4.8 boards, and 1.7 assists. But the 33.1% three-point shooting, it's kind of what Crowder does. You stick him in there off the bench or starting, and he's your high-energy kind of guy. I really do like him in Memphis. I'm just not sure if he's a little too old there. He has bounced around the league a lot, but maybe a veteran presence there would be nice. Speaking of veterans, Kyle Korver. Look, they're getting him in the deal. I do not expect this guy to be a Memphis Grizzly to start next season. Heck, the guy might even retire. I don't know. 8.6 points per game, 2.3 rebounds. Nobody really cares about that when Kyle Korver's on the court. It's all about his three-point shooting. Nearly 40%. The guy has been historically one of the best three-point shooters since he's been in the game. Love Korver as a shooter. Don't love him for the Memphis Grizzlies. He was really just in this trade to make the money work. Don't expect him to be in Memphis next year. So you just saw who Memphis got. Those are your three players that the Grizzlies got. Doesn't really move the needle. It's all about the draft picks. But I want to know from you guys, again, who won this trade? Is it the Grizzlies or the Jazz? I'm sticking with the Jazz. Mike Conley starting there with Donovan Mitchell. Look, if you didn't think Utah was a playoff team, first of all, you're wrong. Second of all, now they definitely are. They're probably even a top 4 Western Conference team, depending on how free agency shakes up. I mean, a lot of things that could end up changing. But again, this trade for the Grizzlies was all about getting a draft pick back and then sending Mike Conley out to open up some cap space. So they get the number 23 pick in the 2019 NBA draft. So what do I have for you? I got my top 5 prospects at 23. At number 1, it's Bol Bol. The guy's falling down draft boards tremendously and quickly because the guy's like 200 pounds and he's like 20 feet tall. He's too big, but he's too skinny at the same time. So I got him at number 1 because if Memphis wants to take a chance, they develop him alongside Ja Morant. Heck, that's not that bad. Nick Claxton, number 2 at Georgia. On the opposite end, this guy is flying up draft boards. He could be a point center type guy. Just wait until you watch him next year. Cam Johnson out of North Carolina brings Memphis some shooting. If they want to pick him, he's an older prospect at 23 years old, I believe. And then Matisse Thybulle out of Washington, one of my favorite players in this draft because of his defensive ability. Won Defensive Player of the Year in college. And then number 5, it's Carson Edwards out of Purdue. But I want to talk again about Matisse Thybulle. Spent some time at Washington. He wasn't their offensive guy. He really wasn't even a go-to option on the scoring end, only 9.1 points per game. But he was the only guy in all of college to average 2 blocks per game and 2 steals per game, and he averaged, I believe it was 3 steals per game. The guy on defense is a menace. You can put him on whoever you want, and he's going to get a stop. So if Memphis wants to pick up a defender, Matisse Thybulle out of Washington would be a great option at 23. So you just saw my top 5 prospects there. Bol Bol, Nick Claxton, Cam Johnson, Matisse Thybulle, and Carson Edwards. I think Matisse Thybulle makes the most sense with that grit and grind mentality in Memphis. But maybe Carson Edwards as your backup to Ja Morant would be a good option too. But I want to know from you guys, from the loyal watchers here at Chat Sports, which player should Memphis select with that 23rd overall pick? Of course, they're going to get Ja Morant at 2. And you got another first-round pick. That's a big win for Memphis. So again, we recap this trade here between the Memphis Grizzlies and the Utah Jazz. It's breaking news. Mike Conley is now a member of the Utah Jazz. Grayson Allen, Jae Crowder, Kyle Korver, 23rd pick, and a future first-round pick all going to Memphis in return for Mike Conley, who has been a franchise piece for the Memphis Grizzlies. Now I got a question for you. I'm predicting they finish top 4 in the West. Conley plus Mitchell plus Rudy Gobert. That's a solid big 3 to build around in Utah. But I want to know from you guys, where will Utah finish in the Western Conference next season?